Let's continue diving deeper into React. We get this form here, this input form, and it looks decent, but I'd like to open it as a modal overlay. So some overlay that's above the rest of the content on this page. And in the end, achieving this look is a pure CSS thing. Now what we could do is we could edit the styles of this new post component such that it has this modal look. You can add a backdrop behind the form, so some background, so that it looks like an overlay. But I'd rather take a different route. In the end, I want to make sure that in the place where I use this new post component, and I just pressed the auto format shortcut here to put these props into separate lines, which is still valid code, but easier to read. But I'd like to take a route where I have a new modal component, which doesn't exist yet, which can be wrapped around new post to give that new post that modal overlay look. Again, this modal component is a component we have yet to add, but I'd like to have a component that can be used like this. Now, the idea behind that is simply that on more complex websites, chances are high that you have all kinds of content that should have that overlay look. Not just this new post form, but maybe also some warning dialogues, anything like that. So it would be nice to have such a wrapper, and being able to wrap content with components of yours is indeed another core React concept. You can really only compose flexible, powerful user interfaces if you're able to also wrap components with other components to apply some extra styles to them, for example. And therefore, to achieve this here, I'll add a new component called modal. A modal.jsx file is therefore added. And attached you find a link to a modal.module.css file, which you should add, which simply comes with some styles that will help us achieve that overlay look. And then inside of modal.jsx, we can create a modal function and export that as a default. And then in there, I want to return a fragment, so this empty tag, where I have a div without any content inside, and then a dialog element that will hold the actual modal content. And this div will be used to render a background, a backdrop as it's also often called, for this modal. Now we should import some CSS classes here from modal.module.css, and then assign one class here to this div, and that would be the backdrop class. And to the dialog, we should also add a class, and that's the modal class. And backdrop and modal are both CSS classes defined in this CSS file. Now with that, we have a modal component, but if we try to use it as a wrapper around new post, so inside of posts list, if I go there and I then try to import this modal component, which we just added, from /modal, like this, and I then use it as a wrapper with the opening and closing tag around new post, you will see that it doesn't really look the way it should. It looks like the backdrop is visible. We have this gray background, this transparent black background everywhere, but the form and the modal is nowhere to be seen. The reason for that is that if you wrap content, no matter if it's a component or some default built-in elements, if you wrap content with another custom component, by default, React does not know where to put that wrapped content inside the wrapping component, so inside the modal component in this case. You have to tell React where that wrapped content should go. And you do tell React with another special prop, so with the props object. And that special prop is the children prop. By the way, instead of always using props dot, you can also use object destructuring here to directly get access to a specific value, so to a specific property of that props object. This is not only possible when using this special children prop, but it works with all props. So for the post component, you could, for example, also use object destructuring to get the author and the body, and then save yourself the props dot call down there. But that's just a side note. So this is just a more concise way of getting access to your props. What's new and important here is this special children prop. Thus far, we always added our own props. A post, for example, has our own author and body prop, and these names were up to you. Now for children, it's different. That's a reserved prop name because children always refers to the content that's passed between the opening and closing tags of your custom component. So here, this content, the new post component in this case, that's the value that will be received on the children prop in this modal component function. And we then output it down there so that we tell React that in the end here, it should output the content that's passed between the modal opening and closing tags. Now with that change applied, we just have to adjust the styling of this new post component here a little bit and get rid of this box shadow, both border radius and margin. And also back in the modal component, add the special open prop on dialog, just like that. The value theoretically is true, but if you set true as a value for a prop, you can also omit it and just add the prop name, and then true will be used as a default value. And this open prop is simply required by the default dialog element to make sure it's visible. And with all these steps taken, you get that overlay with that form, and it's above the other content. So that's great. That's now the children prop in action, helping us create a component that can be used as a wrapper around another component.